House Bill 12, Judiciary, and seems like we have a good crowd for you today, so please begin.
I'm going to take that as a positive sign, Senator. My name is Betsy Ledgerwood. I'm the clerk of the Supreme Court. I'll be presenting the budget today. For those who know me, I think I usually say that I have the best team in the world. They're here with me today, our Office of State Courts Administrator. We have a new budget manager, Larissa Bass. If I'm saying something and they're shaking their heads, go with them, okay? That's just generally the best advice, but they know to stop me if I do something terribly wrong here. So, Senator, I'm going to just take a few minutes to just share a few words about our branch generally. We are a branch of people. And by that, I mean, even though we are a state branch of government here, most of our personnel is throughout the state in your communities, approximately 3,500. And we are also a branch of people, and by that I mean nearly 3/4 of our budget is salaries for individuals, and the majority of those salaries are set by the Constitution or by state statute. So we understand the budget times that we are in and the budget times that we are entering. I stand committed to working with this committee to do those things that you feel that we need to do with our budgets. But I just ask that we have open communication, that we're allowed to have some input because of these salaries and the people that are affected. We may have less ability, our 5% may be different because of the ways that many areas we can't touch because of these things. So I just always want to put that out there, but that we are aware and that we are also a lot of our decisions, and we do have a lot of new decision items this year. Most were not recommended by the governor, but they are driven by state statute. And a lot of those are even recent statutes. So I will just be pointing those out. We are happy to do that, but we do have some laws on the books, but we want to make you very aware that our requests are just coinciding with what our fiscal notes were. So that we're being very transparent about we are happy to do the work, but that there is a fiscal cost to us. And I just want to make you aware of that. So thank you very much. I'm going to start on
Hold on,
page...
just
I'm sorry?
Betsy,
Can I
Senator.
ask a follow-up on that?
Oh, absolutely.
Thanks, Betsy. Okay, so again, you started off with saying that really most of your funding is going to people here, right? What were the core reductions in terms of FTEs recommended by the governor?
Was it the 5? We had core reductions of FTEs of 5, and that was with our pretrial services. This is a relatively new program that we've had that I'll talk a little bit later in the program about, but the governor did make a recommendation of a reduction of that, and there were 5 FTEs tied to that.
Okay, so those are the 5 FTEs, and that's a program that I remember we worked on the last couple of years with the goal of providing folks with wraparound services to ultimately, during that pretrial program, or process, to ultimately get them the wraparound services so that then they won't.
So if I can take a minute, Mr. Chair, I'll kind of talk about pretrial maybe a little bit now, even though it's not in the order. We're a big believer in pretrial in that I can't necessarily tell you that you will find the savings in our budget when pretrial is successful, and we do hope that someday it can be statewide. It is not right now, but we believe it's a lot like our treatment courts in that it gives us the ability to spend the resources we do have on the right people, that there are consequences when maybe low-level offenders or offenders who the science has shown would be less likely to recidivate, spend time with people who are more likely to recidivate. I think we've all heard the joke that, you can send a bad criminal to jail with good criminals, and he or she may come out a better criminal for that experience. And I know that's, maybe a too casual way to put that. But it's identifying those people that if you get them out and get them the services they need, they are actually very able to rehabilitate. And those may be mental health services, which we're seeing in other areas. But just the jails are not the appropriate places to be the mental health hospitals or to be the homeless shelters or those types of things that those people may be very easy to get back into the community and get to be successful, tax-paying, good parents, those types of things that we want for our citizens.
Okay, and I jump in now, and Mr. Chair, just because I have to run up to another hearing, so I just wanted to make sure that I asked that question because I think we've started to see some real success there. And at the same time, and I had a conversation with DOC at the beginning of the week, and if the committee hasn't seen this, I really encourage the committee to look at how our incarcerated population is increasing drastically. And some of that comes down to the changes in the criminal code, but when we look at these numbers, I mean, it is absolutely staggering, the growth here. that we're seeing in correction. So again, when we look at cost savings and ROI, all of those things, we have to be really cognizant looking at your budget. How are we ultimately reducing recidivism and not spending $38,000 a year on
Right.
incarcerating
Yeah,
individuals?
and Senator, I think I probably didn't finish that thought, but we believe that, and with time, sometimes it's not immediate, that you won't see money spent there will not show you necessarily savings in our budget, but we do believe it will be savings for counties eventually and for DOC, that, money spent here saves money somewhere else. So if you're, for
So
a
it's there
dollar
as
for
well.
dollar in our budget, I can't ever guarantee you that I'm going to be able to show you that, but other states and other programs have shown that we do have savings in other places in the state budget.
And then another one of the cuts that I think it's really important for us to recognize as well is a recommendation of cutting treatment courts by $250,000, and that's another one that if I just tremendous success in those programs, and that was a hard one to see as well.
Yeah, and I want to point out just briefly too that was opioid money that was cut, so that's not even GR, and that is currently the only opioid money we're receiving. So,
Okay, thank you.
all right, Senator. I'm going to start on, so just briefly with our book, for those of you who aren't familiar, we do have a little, just a piece at the front that kind of explains some of the programs that we're going to talk about. We are less than 2% of the overall GR budget for the state. And then also on the back, sometimes when we're having our conversation, I'll start throwing out circuit numbers. And that may, not be much like I don't understand your I understand your legislative numbers, but if you tell me, I may not know exactly where you are right off the top of my head. This shows where our circuit and appellate regions are for a quick reference. So I did on the back of our book. So on page 11, Senator, is what our Citizens Commission on Compensation for Elected Officials. Judges, Article 3 judges are in this compensation report, as are, our statewide office holders and our members of the General Assembly. And under this report, the last report is from 2020, but it references a 2010 report. Judges' salaries are tied to their federal counterparts. So when a federal judge gets a raise, our judges get a corresponding percentage of that. There has been a lot of federal litigation in the past over this, and so it's nothing that we can predict or put our finger on. We put a placeholder in the budget for 1.5%, and the reason I call that a placeholder is we have to submit our budgets in October, but we don't know what the feds are going to do usually till January 1st, so we have to take our best guess. We had a 1.5%. The feds ended up having a 1%, so the number you see there is higher than what we actually need. Or actually require, I'm going to be frank. So that 1% would show $704,000 for judges, Article 3 judges. The governor did not recommend this increase. And we have had this discussion in many years past. We have in the past paid this without an appropriation and will continue to because we have to. And the reason I will say that we have to, much like we're in the same boat as you all, you have to under the Constitution, is because the citizens of the state voted, I believe, in 2006, but I would need to double check that number. They actively removed subject to appropriations from the language of the constitutional provision of that compensation report. And so that is the short answer of why we have it listed as a constitutional mandate, that we see that we have no choice. So we do have years where that's not been funded. I've said that we've covered it, but the more those holes we have, those gaps, the less flexibility that I can have on those other things that I've pledged to work with you on, okay? And I just want to be really frank with that. So I would just tell you that is a gap. I was sorry to see that wasn't recommended, because under the law, I really feel like I know that we have no choice but to fund that. So that's what you will see there. And those raises go into effect on July 1st for us. We do not do them on January 1st when the feds do. The state court, the Supreme Court has a ruling that says, since our budgets start on July 1st, that the first 6 months of that triggering, it doesn't happen until July 1st. So that's where we are there. So I wanted to point that out to you. On pages 14, 16, and 18, I'm going to take those together. That shows you the FY19 to FY22 when the General Assembly did not fund those raises. So we have a gap that we eat every year on that. And we did ask this year for that hole to be plugged, just because that is a large amount of money that we're eating every year. But I will say, and I know that, Senator, when I met with you earlier, I committed to you that, the Supreme Court, we can make it work, and our circuit courts plug that hole every year. It's not easy for them, but since we're all the circuit courts together, there's usually enough vacancy savings. If you were only going to look in one place to plug this hole, if you came back to me and said I can only do it for one group, I would point you to the appellate courts. And that's because they are our smallest in staff. They have the less amount of turnover, and it really hits them, especially like, for example, the Western District, they own their own building. So if utility prices go up, this just hits those groups the hardest. And so we all need it, but if you want to know where it's the worst for them, it's truly there. And then to add another budget year gap on them would be devastating. So I will move on to our marijuana redaction software, page 20. We list that under constitutional mandates as well. This is the money that we asked for the constitutional, I don't even remember, Amendment 1, was that it? Amendment 2? They blur in my head. But I'm scared to say that. Yes. Page 20. I'm sorry, Senator. We were required to keep a separate, basically, file or group of files on that. So we have to have higher security on that, and we are asking for, this is just the increase in what that software is going to cost us this year. And we asked for that for marijuana funds. And I believe the governor did recommend that one. So then on page 22, under state statute, commissioners, so family court commissioners, probate commissioners, et cetera, they are tied to Article 3 judges by statute, not by constitution. So when federal judges get triggered, Article 3 judges get triggered, these folks do too. And this is what their increase would be. The 1% is about $69,081. So that's the updated number. In the past, when we have not received that, we have not paid it. But, and then that is because there has never been like a lawsuit on that. I don't know what would happen if there was, and that would be a risk for us if we lost that lawsuit, and would have to come up with that money. But we do show that differently to you all, just because it's statute versus the Constitution. All right, I'm going to take you to page 25. That's the court reporter salary adjustments. You all passed a new statute 2 or 3 years ago that gave tenure increases to court reporters. Court reporter salaries are statutory, and there is language about subject to appropriation, but there are 15 court reporters that are triggered under that statute for increases this year, and the amount you see reflected there is what that would cost us. So that is that, but just wanted to point that out. Then also on page 27 is circuit clerk salary adjustments. I believe last year or the year before, a new statute was passed that changed circuit clerk salaries. These are elected and appointed circuit clerks based upon their county classification. And so this amount reflects what would be required in section 483.083 for those of you who want that reference. For the 112 circuit clerks that would be affected by that legislation. The governor did not make that recommendation. We will go on to page 29, and this is for justice interpretive services for civil cases. You all changed the statute last year to make it very clear that the state must pay for interpreter services in civil cases. The states always had to pay for in criminal cases, but it was changed to civil cases. So this is the amount. We are having to pay for that already now. Once the statute changed, on August 28th. So we are paying for that even though we don't have an appropriation. We asked for a supplemental. The governor did not recommend that. We are asking for it here in a new decision item, and he also did not recommend that, but that is money that we are paying out
I got a question.
currently.
So basically, we passed the legislation requiring the increase, and then we don't
It's
fund
not
it.
an increase, but it was so what it was, Senator, was the statute was unclear whether the state had to pay for that or not. And so we were caught between a statute that had different language than the criminal statute did. So we were reading it as you don't have to pay for it. At that time, the Department of Justice was sending letters to states that didn't pay for it, saying, yes, you have to. And so kind of in that betwixt and the between, the General Assembly changed the statute to make it clear, to really more align with what the Department of Justice was saying, to say that we do have to pay for that.
So we have to pay for it, but we're not funding it.
You did not put money in the budget last year, even though the legislation passed. Yeah.
Unfunded mandate.
Then on page 31, criminal cases, like I said, the state did have to pay. You all were good enough to give us money for that a couple of years ago. We do a rolling 3-year average on what we actually pay, and so this just shows the increase in what we're actually paying. So just we have an appropriation, but it's no longer adequate. And I cannot point, we've kind of looked, I cannot point to any area of the state or certain types of laws that are driving this. This is just an all-over increase in the amount of criminal cases that just need an interpreter of some kind. So moving on, and like I said, the governor did not recommend that either. Moving on to mental health courts, there was a statute that was passed, and we are asking for a GR transfer into our treatment courts for the addition of mental health courts. There was a statute that was passed that added mental health courts. I mean, we are incredibly supportive, and our request for our GR transfer it just reflects what our fiscal note did as well. That this is what we've asked for, those increased costs. But great program, and we're excited to do it, but just want to be transparent in between our fiscal notes and what we're asking for the GR transfer. Moving on to, with that, and then so moving on then to page 35, our mental health courts. What we're asking for here, this reflects to, one, the cost to increase our mental health courts, and then to also properly staff and coordinate with our current mental health courts, because we do have some. This just helps them have those programmatic dollars, and then have those individuals to help with the wraparound services. We've done a lot of work in our communities of putting our courts in touch with their local resources that they already have. We call it SIM mapping, but just making sure that, and it would just help facilitate once we put those resources in touch together to make sure that they're continually able to work together and use those services that may already be in the community to service these people. All right, moving on then to page 38. This is the Child Councils program. So Senator Fitzwater, I'm looking at you. We've had some money to start this up, and for a pilot program, we have identified 3 circuits that we are working for with our pilot programs to look at using this Child's Council in different ways. We have using our money kind of like guardian ad litems are paid. We're working on MOUs with those 3, permitting that. The ask that we have shown is the kind of the cost to continue on what those pilot programs would be, and then also to fully have a commission, which is what that statute calls for. And I believe that your legislation, if I'm being correct, it has a date certain, has subject to appropriations language, but allows us to do the pilot programs. And so we're trying to kind of do that to gather information, but this reflects the next stage of what that would be, and then to show the total cost going forward and what we think this would be statewide.
Great, thank Betsy. Mr. Chair, I hope you don't mind, I'll just jump in here, but there was, I believe in the fiscal 25 and fiscal 26, there was 750,000 in each of those budgets, so $1.5 million. Currently, is that correct, that we had 2 years of?
750 each year, so they didn't combine, but over.
Oh, it was a reappropriation?
Right.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Is that's just pilot program that's going to be focused on doing that? What happens with that if we don't continue to fund in any form or fashion
So
going
it
forward?
was, my understanding is, Senator, is it's in the budget as one-time funds, and so next year, if there wasn't a continuation of that money then would not be available. We are spending what we can of it this year, getting up on the pilot projects running, but that 750, I don't believe, continues next year, does it?
Yeah, I know it's subject to appropriation.
Right.
We had, and it was a one-time funding, so it's a thing that has to be fought for on
Right.
a yearly basis. So we'll work on that and see what we can come up
Yeah.
with. It's obviously a tricky year, but
Yeah, no, and that's why we're just, like I said before, we're just trying to be really transparent about,
and I appreciate it. I think that there's some of this that it makes sense. Like you mentioned, these aren't necessarily. It feels siloed, but these have impacts across our budget. So appreciate it.
Yep, thank you. All right, moving on then to page 41, is that right? All right, thank you, Larissa. These are new circuit judges and court reporters. There is a statute, it is subject to appropriations, but that talks about if a circuit, we do a judicial weighted workload, if a circuit shows a need of, for 3 years of, is it 3 and higher?
3 more years.
3 more years of a need, then we make you all aware of what those circuits would be. And then we also show, and sometimes you all add them, sometimes you add circuits that we don't have on our list, but for reasons that you feel are good, and that is great. But right now, we have 3 that under that statute, if you choose to fund, would be triggered, and that's the 13th, which is Boone and Callaway County, the 19th, which is Cole County, and the 21st, which is St. Louis County. And so what that reflects are new circuit judges for those circuits, along with the court reporter. We add a court reporter because there is a statute that says when there's a new circuit judgeship created, a court reporter goes with that. So that's why we do that. Moving on to page 44, juvenile officers. We have a juvenile weighted workload too. We really try to base our asks on personnel based upon what our numbers are showing us with our caseload. And so we do have a need for additional juvenile staff in several of our circuits. And if you want me to run through the list, I can, but it's not a short list. For a total of 13 FTE, this is what that would require to meet our current workloads recommendations. This was not recommended by the governor. And to be clear, the circuit judgeships were also not recommended by the governor. Juvenile detention facilities on page 46. I know that we've had these discussions before, but there have been changes to the law that have changed how we detain juveniles. Raise the age, and then some changes to certification. And so the reality for our juvenile detention facilities then are we are holding higher level kids, and by higher level kids I mean kids that have committed higher level crimes, and that is because the law changed. It used to be that once you were certified as a youth to be an adult, you went to an adult facility. We are now holding those youth in our youth facility through their court case. And so basically, to put that in perspective for you, our detention centers, traditionally, they don't hold youths for a long amount of time. But when we have a certified youth, they're taking up 5 beds. And so what I mean by 5 beds is we would normally cycle 5 kids out for the length of time that we're holding that certified. So not only are they there longer, our facilities may not physically be set up to hold kids of that violence level. Usually they're older, just to be frank, so you want to keep them a little bit more separated, kind of like we talked about with pretrial, that sometimes you don't maybe want the younger kids exposed to the older kids, especially that are at higher levels. And so we have been trying to work through this, but we have had requests from our detention facilities that because of this change in our makeup of who our bed patients are, so to speak, is that they would really like to have more mental health contractors, because much like in the juvenile realm, like we're seeing with mental health courts and with prisoners in DOC and in jails, we're seeing a lot more mental health issues. And then also because sometimes the facilities were never contemplated to hold these types of kids or to keep certain types of kids apart in a way that we have to now, security contractors. And so the governor did not recommend either of these. The mental health contractors are shown on page 46. The security contractors are on page 48. We're estimating about $50 an hour. For the security personnel, we would need 24 hours a day. But that's what those would be. So it's a lot of money. Let there be no doubt, about $9 million total. But we believe it's what we need to keep the kids in the facility safe and to keep the people who are working in the facility safe.
Yes, Senator Washington.
Hi, thank you all for being here. So I know you said that because the law changed, but I want to clarify that not only did the law change in terms of how long we have to hold those that are under, 21, that's also makes us federally compliant as well, correct?
Right, correct.
Yeah, so it wasn't just,
It wasn't just yes, you're correct.
yeah, so we just, when we changed that, 2 years ago, we did that to comply with federal law. And they stay, and I want to, for those listening, want to make it clear that we have our short-term detention and we also have long-term, I call them juvie prison facilities. And so they stay there until the time to transfer to adult facilities, correct?
So I'm going to turn this over to Kathy Lloyd, because actually
I'm sorry,
before
Miss
she
Kathy.
became my right hand, she was a juvenile officer. But I think you may be talking about like the DYS facilities.
Yes.
Yeah, and so that is different from us, different budget. We are trying to work with them to try to see if there's, a way to fix some of these problems that maybe aren't throwing more money at it. But we are still in conversations of, maybe at some point, and this is just Betsy talking, can we have a facility that's just for the certifieds? But Kathy, will you take a minute to explain what she's addressing, understanding the different programs?
Right, so
You might
You have to come up, Miss
and
Kathy.
then you'll have to do a form.
okay.
Oh, sorry, there's a stand-up one, I apologize.
Okay, thank you. So certified youth are still held in the juvenile detention facilities
Okay.
that are part of the judiciary. A youth may be committed to the Division of Youth Services and stay there until they're
Until
18
after
or
trial.
21, sometimes 21, but usually 18. So right now, the certified youth burden is falling on these detention facilities.
And at what age do they transfer? If they still have still have prison term left, what age do you transfer them to DLC?
At 18, they can go to jail. If they are tried and convicted, then at the point of their conviction, they would go, even if they were under 18 at that time.
Okay,
But
so
it's
I
a
thought
period of
I
time.
thought federally that if they were underage, even if they were certified, they should not be in an adult
Well, there are
prison.
dual jurisdiction facilities that the Division
Okay.
of Youth Services has.
Because they do need to be separated from,
Well, and once they're convicted, I think that the provisions may be different, but there are dual jurisdiction facilities where a person can be held until they're 21.
okay, yeah,
And
okay,
that's part of the DYS program as well.
okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate it. All right, so moving on then to page 52, a treatment court commissioner. The 39th Circuit has qualified for a treatment court commissioner under our standards, and so we submit that to you. The governor did not make that recommendation. We have found that where we have treatment court commissioners in circuits, we're just able to have more nimble and robust treatment programs, because otherwise it's other staff, we have people besides the judge who are able to work on those types of cases. And so, but that was not recommended, but we do put that for your consideration. Statewide, I was prepared, if you would have asked me a couple of weeks ago, to come and advocate for the expansion of pretrial. I'm optimistic, but even I am not going to advocate for that right now. I would advocate for the restoration. And we talked about this briefly with Senator Nuremberg at the beginning. So the governor recommended cutting our current pretrial program. That's 5 FTE and $1.75 million. I would advocate strongly, it's one of the priorities of our Chief Justice, to ask for the restoration of this pretrial program. It would not, take it statewide, but it would allow us to keep those pilot projects up and running where we do have it. Would allow us to keep continuing to educate. Some communities decide to start a pretrial program even without state funding. It helps us work with them and continue to kind of keep that under the model of how it should be for best practices. And we do fundamentally believe that you'll see savings in other areas of the budget, as we discussed earlier. So that is our request there. Like I said, a little bit of a pivot from where I thought I would be. We understand that would be an expansion, would be a huge ask, and so, but at the very, very least, we do ask for a restoration of that. Our behavioral health teams, I talked about this briefly earlier too on page 57. This is when I was talking about our statewide SIM mapping and working with the mental health resources already in a community. This would allow us to have coordinators that would make sure our courts can continue to liaise and work with the services that are available in their community. We do a little bit of that now, but this just helps us, this is, to me, the fundamental of doing more with less. We're, taking two people that would allow us to increase what we can have already, coordinate and kind of synergize, I hate that word, but with the folks that are already out there just to serve the people we need to serve. So that's what that is. Another program that I'm excited to talk about on page 60 is Easy Warrant. This is a program that we just piloted in St. Louis County, and it is a program that was paid for by the county but allowed judges and prosecutors and court staff to ask for a warrant, submit documentation for a warrant, obtain a warrant, all electronically. And it took a process that could easily take 3 or 4 hours, which sometimes if you're at a crime scene, time lost is time you really can't get back, and it can affect the outcome of the crime, quite frankly, of whether you're able to find the perpetrator or solve the issue. We got great feedback from law enforcement and prosecutors. We would love to take this program statewide. And what we have asked for is what it would cost us to take it statewide. We believe that there is savings for the counties across the state in time. It allows for better warrants because, quite frankly, you can't submit it if you don't have the proper affidavits and documents. So it helps prevent a faulty warrant or those types of things. The governor, we asked for new money. The governor made the recommendation but changed the funding source to our court automation fund. And we cannot afford to pay for this statewide out of our court automation fund. I mean, if we could, we would, but court filings are down, and that is just not a safe place for us to do that. So we do believe it's an important program. We would like to see it, but just know that if it continues from the court automation fund, I can't guarantee that we can do it because we just don't have the funds within that fund right now to do that. So also page 62 is our information security and maintenance increase. This is merely the increase in the software kind of licensing fees to keep what we have. You've heard me say before that I fundamentally believe our court records have some of the most privileged private information of any of our citizens. It is very important for us to keep that safe. We were asked a couple of years, instead of just asking for one big IT dollar amount, show us what you're actually going to spend it on, which is the easy warrant, this increased maintenance fee. So this is why you may look at that and say, well, this is not a huge ask, but this is just merely the 12% increase that we've got in the software licensing to kind of keep the security level that we have. So we will move on to our cores. I am only going to talk about the cores that have changes. And so that is going to take us to page 183. And this is a core reduction recommended by the governor of $250,000. I mentioned this earlier. This is opioid money. This is not a GR core reduction to our treatment courts. And then also then to page 188. And this is the reduction I talked about in regards to pretrial of the 5 FTE and the approximately just south of $1.8 million for our current pretrial programs. Mr. Chairman, can I answer
Thank
any more
you.
questions?
I did
Hopefully I
look
did not
out.
bore you into sleep, but
No, I was looking out the corner of my eyes to see if anybody's hands were coming up, et cetera. Do any senators have any questions before we adjourn? Thank you very much. Well,
oh, sneaky.
oh, yeah, this, I wish it was a question of yours, ma'am, but this is our next hearing.
Oh, okay.
Tuesday, February 3rd, Higher Ed and Department of Natural Resources. Okay, thank you. With that announcement, we adjourn.